excited to have here Josh Harrod. I sent you in the constant contact email a little description. Who had a chance to read that? Okay, most of you did. Okay, good. So Josh has actually been friends since college days. We were both at Radford University together. He was actually in his last year as I was coming in for my first year. So I met him then, but didn't really get to know him. And then he went away for a year of AmeriCorps. If you don't know what AmeriCorps is, you all know what AmeriCorps is, right? It's like the Peace Corps, but you stay in the country. So he went to California with the AmeriCorps as a volunteer for a year. And then he came back to Radford to work on his master's degree in English. And so we really got to know each other at that time. And since then, we've kept in touch, not as well as I think we'd like, but as best as we're going to do.
That's right. And we're getting old.
That's right. So,
Anyway,
Josh has also gotten a second master's degree from Eastern Mennonite in counseling. Is that right?
You're right.
Okay.
You're on.
And has since been working in that field. But that's not why he's here. He's here to talk to you about his Buddhism and how he is a lay practitioner of Buddhism. And it's not as if he just picked up a book on Buddhism and read it and thought, hey, I like this, I'll be a Buddhist. But he has actually taken several different sets of vows as a lay practitioner. And he may talk about some of that. But anyway, you've heard enough from me, so I now turn it over to Josh Harrod.
Thanks, Nick. Thank y'all. Y'all are very kind. To further complicate the matters and to damage my Buddhist street credibility, let me start by saying I'm also on the leadership council of a Presbyterian new worshiping community. We're not a church because we are kind of equal parts offshoot of the Iona Christian community in Scotland and the Presbyterian Church, PCUSA. We are a funky little group that meets in a holler out in Floyd County in the mountains of Appalachia. We meet on Tuesday nights. We sit in rocking chairs in a circle. We have communion out of a mason jar. We play the banjo and fiddle. We don't have a sermon. Our pastor is Korean American. Her father was first generation in her family to convert to Christianity after her whole family having been Buddhists. So I'm actually an interfaith practitioner, but I'm not really here to talk about that. What that means, for people who believe in Jesus, who is 100% man and 100% God, I'm 100% Christian and 100% Buddhist, and I'm here to talk about Buddhism today. So now that that's all very muddy and very murky, I want to start by doing something that is very in keeping with the teachings I've received. Actually, let me give you another very clear disclaimer here. There is no Great Commission in Buddhism, right? There is no proselytization in Buddhism. Nothing that I say here is with the intention of converting anyone to Buddhism. There is no go ye therefore and spread the Dharma, right? I'm just here to tell you about my experience as a practitioner. I very much applaud your interest in learning about Buddhism and other world religions as part of your own faith journey, and Father Nick's commitment to providing that as part of Christian education. I think that's very important. Okay, so just want to make sure that we're all clear on that. I want to start, though, with that being said, something that's very important within the tradition, the teachings that I've received, which is setting an intention and hoping that we can share this intention here today, which is that this not be a glorified book club meeting, right? That this not be a curiosity gathering, right? That we can agree that we're not here just to satisfy like some curiosity, like, let's see what the Buddhist has to say, or oh, that's what a Buddhist looks like. But if we could begin by being here, right now. Those of you who are watching the live stream, it might be a little harder, so you may want to kind of close your eyes. Be where you are right here, right now, in the body that you are in. Yeah? With its aches and pains, with its sniffling noses, yeah, with its arthritic knees. Yeah. With its aches and pains, itches and scratches. To bring your mind into the body that you have, not the body that you wish you had. In the room that you are in right here, right now. With the hum of the lights or the microwave or whatever that is from the room behind us. Where we are now. No other place. And set the intention to that in the time we share together. If there is any way that the time we share together can lead to us being of benefit to one another and to other human beings that we encounter, that it may be so. That if there's any way that anything we talk about can have the fruit of us being better prepared to help other people that we encounter, that it may be so. Can we do that? Thanks. All right. So what I want to do is, in reverse, instead of me talking and then saying, hey, do y'all have any questions, and let's do Q&A at the end, it would actually help me to start with seeing what questions you may have, and then that will help me know what to talk about. That doesn't mean I'm necessarily going to answer your questions, but it just will help me know what it might be beneficial for me to address. So this could be questions about things that Nick has already talked about. It could be questions about my own experience, my own path. It could be questions based on books, Buddhist texts you've read on your own. It could be questions about the video. Some of you may have watched the wonderful interview with Bill Moyers and Pima Children that I recommended that you watched for last time. Yeah. Meditation. So hard.
How did you become involved with the Buddhists? What led you to hear what he has to say?
Yeah. Okay. Okay. What else?
I had a question that you've already answered, sort of, is reading and studying about Buddhism. I kept thinking, well, why can't you be a Christian Buddha?
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
Yeah, so currently the community that I tend to sit with in, so there's, my own practice looks like currently there's individual formal practice that I do, and there's individual informal practice that I do, and then there's community practice that I do. And the community that I tend to sit with is a Zen group that meets in Blacksburg, and the two teachers of that group are both lineage holders in Zen Buddhist lineage. They're both also Catholic lay ministers. The Zen teacher that they received Dharma transmission from, or lineage instruction from, was a Jesuit priest. Yeah.
Because in the video, she said that she doesn't believe in Jesus and doesn't believe in God. So it seemed to me like, well, if you did believe in Jesus and God, you just sort of piggyback that on top of the
So Pima Chudron doesn't, but she's one person.
But some people
Sure.
do.
Yeah,
such as you.
Absolutely. And so within within one of the communities that I also practice with and receive teachings from, one of my fellow Sangha members is a Muslim and a Buddhist. Sure, lots of space. Lots of space. Yeah, yeah, sure. And there's lots of emphasis on non-duality, and there's lots of emphasis on breaking out of either or, like rigid either or thinking, and trying to create space for kind of both and thinking. Yeah, we can talk more about that.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome.
I was just wondering what your regular practice looks like.
Yeah, it's a very good question. Yeah.
I know that's different for different people.
Yes, very much so. And at different times in my life,
Yeah.
it looks differently. Yes, sir.
How's Buddhism changed your life with your involvement in it?
Yeah, great question. What else?
What belief or practice sort of unites Buddhism in the sense of like to call oneself a Buddhist? What's the criteria there?
Yeah.
In different sects of Christianity, it can be very different. So I imagine that may be true in Buddhism as well. But
Yeah, good question.
To be a Buddhist.
What's Zen?
Oh, jeez. Well, wash your mouth out with soap. Are you a plant? Are you trying to catch me? Did you plant her? She asked, what is Zen? Are you trying to get me in trouble? Nick, did you bring her in? Roshi, are you hiding somewhere? What is this? Oh my goodness. All right. I'm going to duck. I'm going to run out the door.
I don't know what I did.
No, this is beautiful. This is beautiful. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to start there. Otherwise, I'm going to get in trouble. Sorry, y'all. How did I become involved in Buddhism? This is great. It's Thomas Merton's fault. Do any of you all know Thomas Merton?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Thomas Merton was a Trappist monk, Catholic monk, perhaps most well known for his book, The Seven-Story Mountain, which is not his best book by any means. I'm more partial to Seeds of Contemplation and some of his, well, anyway. In one of his essays, it's called Day of a Stranger, one of his friends was this South American poet and had asked Merton, what is your daily practice like? What is it like for you to live as a Trappist monk? And it's one of my favorite things that Merton ever wrote. He wrote this essay called Day of a Stranger. And it's about what his life was like. And this time he was living in a hermitage in the woods at the Abbey of Gethsemane outside of Louisville, Kentucky. And he's talking about just what his day is like. And there's this one part where he says, how I pray is breathe. How I pray is breathe. And then he says, if you said Zen, wash your mouth out with soap. And I was 18. And I was like, whoa, what is this? What is all this? So a little backstory. My dad was a preacher. My mom is an ordained minister. My stepfather is an ordained minister. My father-in-law is an ordained minister. My stepmother-in-law is an ordained minister. There's a lot of them, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of them. I really began reading deeply in other world religious traditions around the age of 18. For me, even to be reading Thomas Merton at 18 was already transgressive, within the kind of evangelical Protestant traditions that I had grown up in. To be reading a Catholic writer was already transgressive. And then to start reading D.T. Suzuki and Thich Nhat Hanh and some of the Zen Buddhist authors was kind of going down another path. But when I began reading those authors, when I began reading D.T. Suzuki and Thich Nhat Hanh, when I encountered, this is still a fundamental text, the Dhammapada, in terms of the foundation teachings in the sutras, in terms of the teachings attributed to the Buddha from the Pali Canon. This was a fundamental text that when I first read, there was just something in it that rang very true to me in terms of individual responsibility for working with one's own mind and a pathway of practice to beginning to examine the stream of one's own thoughts and the possibility of taming one's own mind, and doing so not just, and these seeds are already present in the Dhammapada, not just for one's own benefit, not just to ease one's own suffering, but also for the benefit of others, to recognize that all beings desire happiness, but we are also skilled at falling into the trap that leads to the exact opposite of what we want, you know. One of the things that Nick had said to you all earlier is, you know, when you can read and read and read all these books about Buddhism and meditation, but there's nothing that compares to meeting a qualified teacher. It's okay. It's good. It's good. There's just nothing that compares to meeting a teacher who actually can give you on the spot instruction and clarification. So it was really for me around 2010 was when I decided that I was, at that point I had been teaching English. I decided I was going to go back to school to be a counselor. I also had decided at that point that I wanted to find a teacher that I could study meditation with. At that point I had been trying to meditate on my own. Why is meditation so hard? Part of this is that when we endeavor to really be with our mind as it is, and to lean into, like, really lean into, I'm not going to avoid, I'm not going to pull back from, I'm not going to run away from, I'm not going to gloss over what comes out from the nooks and crannies and crevices and dark corners of the stream that is mind. There's all kind of stuff that floats through that stream when we start turning over those rocks. It gets uncomfortable. It gets uncomfortable. We can get very self-judgmental. We can get very rigid. We can get very uptight about it. We can get very intent on this is something I'm going to do and I'm going to do it right. We can get very self-congratulatory. Oh, I'm doing it, I'm meditating. right? There are so many ways that we can trick ourselves. Or we can use meditation to build up the very habits that we're trying to stop. And to have just a friend at first, just a friend, a mentor, who can say, actually, if you just like relax a little bit, you know, or who can just say, oh, you don't have to be so tight, or who can say, oh, actually, just try tucking your chin in a little bit. At first, that's all we need when we meet a teacher. Or someone who can say, just like really honestly, you know, if you're really trying to decrease your anger, maybe you ought to stop drinking. Because, you know, you might not realize how much you're drinking, but when you have that third beer, the volume in your voice tends to go up a lot more quickly. Something like that, you know? The teacher at first is really like a spiritual friend. They're not like sitting high up on the throne and speaking from on high. And the first spiritual friend I met was actually a monk at a retreat center. At the same time I started studying to be a professional counselor, I started going to a weekly study group and receiving formal meditation instruction, and started studying some of the classical texts of Mahayana Buddhism. All right, I feel like I'm rambling. But that gets to why is meditation so hard? Working with the mind, like we dodge it, like we try to avoid it so much, right? There's another part of meditation that's not hard. Like the core components of meditation, there are core components of meditation that are our birthright as human beings, and we do them all the time. But they're so close that we don't see ourselves doing them. The self-reflective capacity of mind is our birthright. The ability for the mind to see itself thinking is something that as human beings, we inherently have that gift, but we take it for granted. So right now, if we just bring awareness, can we all bring awareness to our sense of hearing? What do you notice?
Silence.
What is that? Beats me too, but you hear those vibrations? Anybody got perfect pitch? Do I have a church musician in the house? Can we all hear that though? Yeah. The fact that I am aware of that, right? That's a gift. We take it for granted. The fact that I could say, can we all bring awareness to our sense of hearing? And you all now are aware of that sound, yeah? Yeah. Yeah. Now we can put a name on it. All right. And now we can all join in the storyline, can't we? Yeah. But there was a moment of pure experience there, right? Yeah. Okay. That's exploring mind. In a spacious, kind of open, non-judgmental way. That's not so hard. Okay. What does my regular meditation practice look like? Yeah. So right now, I'm getting older. I'm having some physical pains in places that make sitting in like a half lotus or a lotus position kind of harder. I just sit in a chair, man. You all can do this too if you want to. I just sit in the chair with my feet flat on the floor. I put my hands on my knees. I keep my eyes open. And kind of like pretend like I'm holding a book, my eyes at a downward slant. And if I were going to give like an instruction, it's like just be with the breath, and then thoughts will arise, and then when they arise, bring the awareness back to the out breath and try to smile. Yeah. So this is as formal as my practice gets right now. Not to make really.
Do you do that a couple of times a day or once a day or?
Good question. So at least I try at least once a day to clear a window where there's a beginning, middle, and end. Yeah. My practice right now is not very formal, right? There have been times where my practice is very formal, right? There have been times where I've kept a shrine in my house, where daily practice has been like wake up, prepare the shrine, like 1 or 2 hours of formal practice every morning before anybody else in my household is awake. And then go to work and then come home and then another hour of formal practice before I go to bed. But that's not where I'm at right now. There's also practice at work. So I work as a mental health clinician at an inpatient psychiatric crisis stabilization unit. We're an 8-bed residential facility for people who are in acute psychiatric crisis, most of whom are coming in with thoughts about suicide or thoughts about homicide, who need acute psychiatric care. We do a lot of psychotherapy groups throughout the day. I get to do some mindfulness groups throughout the day with clients. So I get to do some meditation practice throughout the day with clients. I do not again, remember me saying that we do not proselytize, so I do not use the words even meditation. I do not use the words mindfulness. I do not talk about Buddha. I do not talk about Dharma, Sangha, 3 jewels, none of that. I do talk about resting the mind. I do talk about working with the breath to calm the body. I do talk about bodily awareness. These are all things, though, that have to do with mental hygiene. This is another reason, y'all, why do I practice Dharma? Dharma, can mean phenomena. It can also just mean truth. What has practicing Buddha Dharma done for me? It has helped me calm my mind. It has helped me be a less impulsive person. It has helped me be less hot-headed. It has helped me be more patient. It has helped me as a mental health counselor when I am working with a client who is in a psychotic episode and they are actively hallucinating and trying to put their hand through a wall to remain calm. When someone is screaming at me because they think I'm someone that I am not, to not personalize that and to, again, remain calm.
Josh, before you continue, I just want to let you know you've got about 10 minutes.
Oh, wonderful.
And I've got 2 questions that I want to throw in there, but if you've got a little bit more to say before I do that.
What belief or practice unites Buddhism? Meditation. Certainly, that's one. You know, that there's going to be some approach to meditation practice. Meditation practice, again, does not have to look like sitting in full or half lotus position for 30, 45 minutes at a time. Again, there's some approaches to meditation that are intentionally quick bursts. There are times when you would see me and not think I'm doing anything, and I am practicing a form of what may be called meditation. There are also, I'm sorry, y'all, I might be confusing, but that's okay. It's all right. There are also, does Pema Children talk about this? She might talk about this. No, it's Sue Blackwell talks about this. There are also, when you get up there, and this is this whole non-duality thing, there are approaches to meditation that are called non-meditation. Because if we, you know, this whole thing about releasing attachment, if I get really attached to meditation, like, I'm meditating, I'm a good meditator, right? One of the antidotes to that is actually called non-meditation. So there's a contemplative practice called non-meditation that we cultivate to help us release our attachment to meditation. Yeah, it's good stuff. There's also a wonderful little book, if you're interested in kind of what are the core beliefs. Belief is it's an interesting word, but we'll go there. There's this wonderful little book by this teacher named Zongsar Khyentse Rinpoche. Don't try to memorize his name, but the name of the book is What Makes You Not a Buddhist? What Makes You Not a Buddhist? There's a whole lot in Buddhism about like the way of negation. So I can't really tell you what makes you a Buddhist, but I can tell you what makes you not a Buddhist. And in it, he talks about the 4 Dharma seals. And the idea is if a teaching hits the 4 Dharma seals, then stamp of approval, right? But even that gets kind of slippery. But here, let me make sure that this is kind of important. So I'm trying to be more 21st century and use the notes feature in my phone instead of like bringing in a notepad. I actually got this because I had a feeling I might actually talk about it. So the 4 Dharma seals, all composite phenomena are impermanent, i.e. the hourglass that's falling apart, right? By composite phenomena, we just mean things that are made of parts. Find me something that's not made of parts, right? We haven't found anything yet that's not made of parts, all the way down to quarks and neutrinos, right? So all composite phenomena are impermanent, truth of impermanence. This goes all the way back to Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha himself. All contaminated things are unsatisfactory. This one I'll have to unpack a little bit. All phenomena lack self-existence. That's anatman, or what's the Pali for that? Anatta. Yeah. Father Nick knows the Pali much better than I do. I veer toward the Mahayana and the Vajrayana, and we go with the Sanskrit. All phenomena lack self-existence. That's the no self. And then nirvana is cessation, or nirvana is true peace. So all contaminated things are unsatisfactory. That's the truth of suffering, basically, dukkha. What do we mean by all contaminated things, though? It is not that the phenomena themselves are contaminated. It is not that the phenomena themselves are contaminated. It is not like in Jewish purity rites. There is not like a clean and unclean phenomena. The phenomena themselves are just fine. It is actually our own projection that is contaminated. Specifically, our tendency to get stuck in grasping. And we talk about 3 root poisons, specifically, and we might see these translated as passion, aggression, or ignorance. Sometimes passion is translated as desire. Aggression is sometimes translated as anger, and ignorance is sometimes translated as bias. But most fundamental level, when we as human beings kind of survey our surroundings, we have a tendency to see, like, well, is there something in this space that's going to give me pleasure? If so, I'm going to go towards it. Is there something in this space that is potentially going to cause me pain? If so, I'm going to defend against it. Is there a bunch of stuff in this space that's neither going to give me pleasure nor pain? If so, I'm just going to zone out and block it out. And that's like the ignorance or the basic bias. So again, it's not that the phenomena themselves are contaminated, it's that the way in which we habitually respond to them, we project this bias, passion, or aggression onto them. And that's what creates the unsatisfactoriness. That's what creates the dukkha. That's what creates the suffering. Is really that projection of that habitual labeling that is so subtle and it happens so rapidly within the stream of our own mind. It happens very quickly. And that's really part of the practice of the meditation, is to notice when we're doing this and come back to the breath. Really, that's part of the deal. Is as whatever thought arises, if instead of acting on that thought, I just let it just float on by, let that bubble just burst on its own, let that bird just fly through the sky, and bring myself back to the breath without getting up from my seat, I'm building the habit, the counter habit, right, of instead of acting on the passion, aggression, or ignorance, just letting it move on by. The meditation practice, and then also the 4 Dharma seals, really unite Buddhism.
It's now 9:50. I'm gonna throw my questions at you.
Do it.
They have to be like
Rapid fire.
yeah.
All right.
So if you had to, in one word or one sentence, distinguish Mahayana from Theravada, which I've
Yes.
heard so much about,
Yes.
how would you make that distinction?
You're so right on that. Mahayana gives lay practitioners so many more practices that we can do. It's not just supporting the monks and nuns. That Mahayana gives lay practitioners a pathway to complete enlightenment. Also, Mahayana really, it's not that the Theravada does not emphasize, like I was saying in the Dhammapada, it's already there. This notion that it's not just enlightenment for oneself, but also the path of practice is to alleviate suffering for all sentient beings. But the Mahayana path really emphasizes the notion of the Bodhisattva who works for the benefit of all sentient beings. So what I asked you to do at the very beginning, again, this notion of this not being glorified book club, but if there's anything here that you can draw on to help you benefit others going forward, that's the core emphasis of why I'm here, why I study, why I practice, why we do this, is the notion of being a benefit to others, not just alleviating my own tiny bit of suffering or pain in this life.
Great. All right. So here's the next one.
Yeah,
Is Buddhism a religion?
of course. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Third question. Well, because there are Buddhists who would say no. Right?
Yeah, and I would argue with them all day long. Like,
Okay.
who are you kidding, guys? Like, get out of here with that. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Third question is, so I understand how Buddhist practice is not in any way in conflict with the Christian faith.
Yes.
but can that be said of Buddhist teaching and, for example, Buddhist metaphysics and Christian theology?
Yeah, I don't have time for metaphysics. The world is on fire, Nicholas. The world is on fire. I don't have to.
But
No, no.
I mean, you know,
No.
what is the goal of the practice? I think is another way of putting it.
No. So all seriousness aside, like when we get to pragmatics, and that's where I'm at in my path right now.
Yeah.
Like in terms of pragmatics, I see no conflict. When we get to like the metaphysics and we get into like belief and we get into theology, there's plenty of places where we could go back and forth, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of like pragmatics and trying to benefit beings, there's no conflict.
All right.
That's where I'm at least.
Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you all for being patient.
Thank you.